Hello and welcome to the CBB version of the Supershow. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, a.k.a. Dubdeuce85, a.k.a. the Niche Sports Connoisseur, and a.k.a. the bringer of green screens of doom. How is everybody doing tonight? I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday and an even better Black Friday experience, whether you are up grinding early morning shopping trips with the fam, trying to get those deals, or you were like me, woke up, did some college football, some college basketball, watched a ton of games, got a haircut, and we have been wrecking shop. It's been a really, really good feast week for the FTN community at large, and I'm very, very proud of that. Speaking of FTN, we are on the FTN Network's YouTube channel. Very, very thankful for that. And we have a promotion still running. If you're not a part of the community yet, you can use that code scrolling at the bottom, Night Hoops, for 50% off your first month. Any subscription at FTN Daily. You can sign up for the NBA package, which gets you CBB, or you could sign up for the actual package of Daily Plus for every single sport. It's a huge deal, gets you a chance to see what we're all about. The content that we offer, I'm very confident, is amongst the best in the entire industry. We cover NFL, NBA, NHL, college sports, the esports stuff, tennis. We have a prodigy of sorts with Josh Gross, who does women's college basketball betting. We have optimizers, we have projections, written content, pre-lock shows, post-lock shows, recaps. I mean, just everything you could possibly need to be a competitive player, whether it's as a DFS player, a bettor, props, totals, game lines, PrizePicks, UD, all this stuff. Like, we really, really are proud. 2024 is going to be even better. We've had a really fantastic season overall, and we really ended, as far as like CBB goes, on a high note last March in the tournament. It was a very dominant run. We have started off equally, if not even more hot this first 3 weeks. We are seeing a very different pricing style from DraftKings, very dynamic pricing style, which when a player has a good game, he's shooting up to 7K from 5.5. We're not getting these repeated broken prices. We're seeing low scores. A ton of us in the afternoon slate earlier scored like 190 to 197 and cashed or even won, in some cases, single entry tournaments. I personally love the tighter pricing, the lower scores. Like, I just feel like the skill level involved there is just so massive, and we're able to carry that out. When you get these slates where there's all these broken prices and it's 290 to win, and everybody has 3K guys going for 40, like, I don't know. That's fun, I guess, but it's not really a good show of skill, if you will. So I'm really happy about that. I hope it continues. Sure, we're going to run into some busts. We're going to run into some weird games. There's going to be foul trouble. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that happens. But if we can just continue to, at the end of every week, show positive to the bankroll, get ourselves into March, and we can really do some big things here. So I'm really, really excited about that. Speaking of injuries, Tremont Mark of Arkansas had a very scary injury earlier today. Hit his back and had to be stretchered out. He is going to be traveling with the team tomorrow. Was cleared out of the hospital, so that's good news, because for a while there that looked like some potentially paralyzed type stuff. So never like to see anything like that. We're winding down Feast Week. We're winding down the MTEs, the preseason or early season, I should say, tournaments. There are a few left throughout the next day or two. Also, during the Christmas time, we will have one more MTE tournament, the Diamond Head Classic, which is a really fun tournament every year in Hawaii. The field this year is actually pretty intriguing. Georgia Tech, Nevada, ODU, St. Mary's, Temple, and UMass teams that are going to be relevant for DFS purposes. So we do have that one coming up. We'll have some stuff to do during the holiday season and Christmas, and especially, which is great. But we're going to be getting into regular slates here, where we don't have to worry about lock coming and going without starters. There's been late scratches. There's been a couple of wacky, zany things that happen, and you just kind of have to grit your teeth and try to get through it. I know Ezra Mannion yesterday ended up being a scratch. He didn't start, and it was like 40% owned, ended up not even playing. Sometimes that stuff happens. Normally, we're pretty good about that with our Discord, but it was Thanksgiving. I couldn't be around, so that was an information that we missed. But we bounced back really nicely today and have hit 2 of the first 3 slates. Grinding through the last one here as NC State and BYU are battling it out in a really, really good game. And we just saw Oregon lose to Santa Clara, which it's always a good day when Oregon loses in any sport. Shout out to Adama Ball, who scored 25 real points, Arizona transfer there. That Santa Clara team retooled and has a very good roster despite losing several key pieces. All right, the slate that we're going to be talking about, there's several, really. They're all going to be small. We have quite a few more games on Sunday, starting out with the 2-game early, which starts right when college football starts tomorrow, which there will be the Q&A show tomorrow morning, same time, 1 hour before lock. So we'll talk about those 2 games. We have a 3-game slate that starts at 4 p.m. Eastern, and then looks like they're going to have some sort of showdown slate later as well. Potentially going to have a 2 or 3 game slate later, but it's going to be kind of a light Saturday for college basketball, but the grind does not stop. We will continue, and we'll talk about each and every one of those games here, and it'll be a relatively quick show, all things considering. So let's start out with the first one, this 2-game slate. Georgetown, everybody's favorite, the Hoyas. I say that in jest. Taking on a team in Jackson State, the Tigers, in which they have some decent pieces that we can look at here, and being that it's Georgetown, I think we don't want to write off anybody facing the Georgetown Hoyas. This is a projection of 80 to 71 on Ken Palm in favor of Georgetown. Now, last Sunday, Jackson State pulled off a stunning victory over Missouri, 73 to 72. And I mean stunning. So Missouri, for whatever reason, tried to start John Tanya and Connor Vanover. That didn't work. They barely played, and they just couldn't get it going there. Still like Coach Gates, but pretty wild to see Jackson State win that one. And they do have a coach by the name of Mo Williams, who's coached at Alabama State for a couple of seasons now, Jackson State for a couple of years. Mo Williams, of course, was on those early Cavs teams for when LeBron James entered the league. Had some pretty decent years. We're getting to the age now, I don't know about you guys, but if you were in your 30s like me and 40s calling, you're starting to see like the sons of players that you grew up watching and players that you grew up watching are coaching. So it's kind of wild. But Mo Williams is here coaching this Jackson State team. Really really huge victory there over that Missouri team. So we'll see if they can follow it up. They are only 1-5 going into it, and they got beaten by Memphis, although they gave them a pretty tight game, 94-77. Got their doors blown off by a very mediocre San Diego team, Cal Baptist, Loyola Marymount, and a really relatively bad Tulsa team all blew their doors off. Jackson State does play at a very high tempo. They're 51 in tempo ranking, so Mo has them playing fast. Defensively, their efficiency is 234th. Offensive efficiency, 294th. Under Mo Williams, they've been a faster team than they were a couple of seasons ago when Wayne Brandt was coaching. So we can count on them to try to push the pace here against Georgetown. Under Ed Cooley, Georgetown's 168th in tempo ranking, 244th in defensive efficiency. So that's what I was saying, like, we're going to be able to take guys against this Georgetown team with confidence. It's going to take Ed probably a couple of seasons to really get the ship turned around and get the Hoyas to a level where, we can look back and be like, wow, the Hoyas are relevant again for the first time since damn near Allen Iverson was on the team, Okulaja, and a couple of other guys. Junkyard Dog and that group. Georgetown is coming off a win last week against American. They had to go to overtime to do it, but they did win 88-83. They won a close one against Mount St. Mary's. The only game they looked especially confident and comfortable in was their first game against Lemoyne. They lost that 1-point game to Holy Cross, and then they lost an 11-point game to Rutgers, where they were it looked like they were completely overmatched. Rutgers, I think, is going to figure it out offensively, but they're a little slow started this year as well. The Georgetown starting group, we'll start with them. They have some viable options here, obviously, because we're talking about a team in Jackson State that may very well keep it close. They may end up, kind of pushing Georgetown and making this, a single-digit game going down the wire. Jackson State, a very porous rebounding team all across the board, both offensive and defensively. They get a very high number of their shots blocked. They turn it over. They're very sloppy. This is a team that is going to give up a lot of stocks and a lot of overall secondary categories beyond scoring. The starting lineup that we will typically see for this Georgetown team: Dontrez Styles, Jaden Epps, Supreme Cook, Rowan Brumbaugh, and Jay Heath, who has been starting the last couple. They do bring Drew Fielder off the bench now after starting him early. The freshman needs a little bit of more time and development. Wayne Bristol, Ryan Mutombo, and Cam Bakate sometimes. But usually we're probably looking at a 6 to 7 man rotation for this Georgetown team, which is, obviously a kind of a hallmark of Ed Cooley teams all throughout his career at Providence. Maybe like the last couple of his career, he went a little bit deeper. But we're pretty used to Ed Cooley running his starting five into the ground. Those Providence teams with Bryce Cotton and a few other, high-name players that were really relevant for DFS purposes. He would play those guys 38, 39 minutes on the regular. It was just like a DFS dream, right? And Alpha Diallo a couple of years ago, I got to look it up now. I can't remember the name. Ben Bentil, that was the other name I was thinking of. Those guys were just like so great for DFS. Henton, LaDonte Henton, like those are some fun teams. So I think that's going to be the case here for Cooley with the new Georgetown roster that he has. He obviously really loves Jaden Epps. He was harping about him all off season, and so far he has been riding with him a lot. 84.4% of the minutes for Epps, most on the team, 27% usage rate, 26% shot rate. He has a 28.5% assist rate, and he's shooting 38% from long range. That's on volume, 27 attempts. So Epps is the guy that we can feel pretty comfortable with. He's only $7K. I think there will be a time where he gets even more expensive with this dynamic pricing that they have. It is the most expensive he's been all season. There was a couple of games ago, he got knocked out, a little bit of a minor injury, came back and was fine. Obviously, he's good to go. You see, he played 36 and 40 minutes over the last two games. Obviously, the American game went to overtime, but still 22 shot attempts in that one, 31 real points. Epps is just going to carry the load when Georgetown needs a bucket or they're stagnant and they just have to get something started. It's generally going to be on the back of Jaden Epps. Dante Styles gives us guard forward eligibility. He has been putting up some massive games the last two. 3 of his first 5, he's been over 30 fantasy points. He has taken 33 shots in his past 2 games, 22-11 against American, 26-8-4 against Mount St. Mary's, 6'9". It's a pretty high price. It's an uncomfortable price, but it really just goes to show you that North Carolina had guys on their bench that just kind of wasted away. I mean, even we saw Puff Johnson. He's having some pretty decent outings here recently for Penn State, but I think Styles is not going to be a non-con hero, which is something I harp about. He certainly could look like one, but if you dig into it and actually look at the talent and the way he's playing, I think he's going to continue to produce even when they get into Big East play. It'll be a bit of a shock at first, but he's got a good frame. He's got a good athletic ability. He has a skill set that he didn't get to show very much under Hubert Davis, and we're seeing it now. Shooting 40% from long range on 25 attempts. He does have a 26% shot rate, playing 82% of the minutes, drawing 4.5 fouls per 40, and he has a offensive rebounding rate of 9%. So I like Styles as well. Gives you some flexibility with his guard forward eligibility, but we're talking about a 2-game slate here. Stacking up Georgetown's probably going to be a popular move against this Jackson State team. Supreme Cook also at 7.5, knowing that Jackson State can't rebound very well. I would imagine Cook sees somewhere between 12 to 15 rebounds. Now, he hasn't been rebounding quite as dominant as he did in their first 2 games, but he's going to get back to doing some big things here. And he's still been putting up relatively decent numbers, and he's proven himself to be a very skilled scorer down low on the block. He's got an effective field goal percentage of 80%, which is 4th best in the country. He's getting a lot of bunnies, of course, but he really does have some intriguing post moves that I didn't realize he actually could do playing for an upper major team. I thought he was a little bit more raw, but he's definitely more refined than I thought. And I did watch some Fairfield games over the last couple of seasons, so it wasn't as if I don't know who Supreme Cook is, but I just was a little bit pleasantly surprised with how skilled he is. 14.5% offensive rebounding rate. So he's certainly a guy, a little undersized there to play the 5 at times, but he's a dude and he's tough as nails. So expect a big game from him as well. Rowan Brumbaugh, I think he's where you can find a little bit of leverage if that's a possibility on a 2-game slate. It's a little bit tough to find. But Rowan Brumbaugh comes in at 6'6". He's wedged in there. It's only 400 more for Epps, only another 300 for Styles. I think most people would go there looking at Brumbaugh. He is coming off a near 30, and he has scored 28 plus fantasy points in 3 of 5. But I just don't know that people are ready to accept Brumbaugh as this strong red shirt freshman type player who is going to be a big time factor, and he's going to play a lot of minutes, and I think they're going to end up trusting him. And I think there's going to be games where Epps does struggle inevitably. Defenses will key in there. Somebody else will have to step up. Who's that going to be? I do think Brumbaugh. He's kind of been around, jumped around. Originally he was supposed to go to Northwestern, ended up going to Texas, didn't get any burn there. Comes to Georgetown, and now he's getting all the burning once. Has taken 25 threes, shooting only 28%, but there's real volume there. Playing a ton of minutes. I think Brumbaugh is an excellent kind of leverage pivot off of some of these other guys like Styles, Cook, and Epps. You have Jay Heath there. He's taken 21 threes. There's a lot of volume for these guys. They have 5 different guys who have taken 11 plus threes, 4 that have taken 20 plus threes. Jay Heath shooting 38%, has a 26% shot rate. Now that Heath is in the starting lineup, he is certainly a good look. He's only 5'4", another player that should be relatively popular. I know he played just the limited minutes there against American. Now, I thought, let me just double check. I watching part of that, it did not look like he's going to be in danger of missing this. Now, he has the not turf toe, but a similar injury to that with his toe. We didn't see any minutes restrictions off the bench for him. And then we saw him start for a couple of games, play over 30, and then we saw him play only a handful of minutes, 18 and 20. As long as he continues to start at 5'4", it's still okay to use him. I know that's scary. That's just going to be something with Heath I think we're going to have to worry about throughout. But assuming that he does start and there's no news that I'm missing at the moment with his toe injury, I think we'll be fine. They'll end up getting Ish Masood back too from his surgery within the next couple of weeks, it sounds like. If Heath were to miss or not start, Drew Fiedler would probably go back to the starting lineup. He's there at 4.9, very raw freshman. Don't love that play whatsoever, but limited options. Wayne Bristol at 4K, I would probably look there more. He ended up playing those additional minutes in the overtime period, had 21 fantasy points. That would be the premium value play that we could use on this 2-game slate. All right, Jackson State. Who can we use on Jackson State? How many of you have watched Jackson State? Probably none, right? But let's break it down, see what we got here with this squad. And I would encourage you guys to, if you can, get an ESPN Plus streaming. If you're like me and you, I don't know if you're at a job where you can like watch YouTube vids or listen to stuff or stream games or whatever, like it's a really good way to kind of watch how certain teams play or teams that maybe you don't get a chance to watch, and even find yourself some betting opportunities or just being familiarized with teams, especially low to mid majors that look like they're going to be in the tournament as we go. Like getting familiar with those teams ahead of the field is a very good thing to do. But you also got me and Stills and Mike Cutry as well if you don't have time to do that. All right, so the starting 5 for Jackson State ends up usually being Ken Evans, Chase Adams, Colty Young, strong name, Jordan O'Neal, and Jamie Mitchell. They do bring Zeke Cook off the bench in a pretty big role, and then Kavine Hunt. Now, they only play about 6 to 7 guys, usually if there is a close game. If they are in a blowout situation, then we see them kind of stretch it out a little bit. They go 9, 10 deep in those circumstances. Against Missouri, though, they ran about 6 to 7. They stuck with their starting lineup throughout. Even the game against Cal Baptist, where they ended up eventually losing by double digits, they were in that one for a lot. All of their starters played over 27 minutes in a game like that. You look back at the Memphis game, same thing. They ended up losing 94-77, but they were pushing them a little bit there. Memphis, new group continuity issues, took them a minute to figure things out. 4 of their starters for Jackson State in that game played 28 plus minutes as well. Hunt came off the bench, but he ends up starting in the last game. Zeke Cook went to the bench after that. So the usage leader is Ken Evans, 26% shot rate. He's making 50% of his threes on 30 attempts, drawing almost 6 fouls per 40. He is a really, really strong player at that low major level. Going to put up some really big stats in conference play. Can he do it against Georgetown? Absolutely. 7-9. I don't have any fear about paying 7-9 for him. I don't foresee him shooting less than 20 attempts in this game. The rest of his rates for his peripheral stats aren't the greatest, but he does contribute in other categories such as rebounds, assists, steals. But you're mainly banking on Evans putting up like 30 real in this matchup, and he really honestly could with his volume. Takes a ton of threes, gets himself to the foul line. He's a very intriguing play. They do have a injury to Keontae Cornelius, who played in their first 2 games, played in their last 2 games and then missed the Missouri game. Very high usage rate when he's on the floor, very cheap price. Don't expect him to play from what I've read on their team site, but if he were, he is only 3-3. Somebody with great rates that could potentially be in play. You have Jordan O'Neal at 6'7", playing a decent chunk of minutes, a little bit high for what he actually gives you. This is one of those plays where we're seeing a lot in the high majors where really decent transfers from a lower major team come over. They have a reduced role for that high major, and the prices aren't just changed. Like Andrew Taylor coming over from Marshall to an SEC team. He started out priced at like 8.5. At Marshall, he was a 9K player. Now he's not a 9K player. It takes time to adjust. Not necessarily the case here with Jordan O'Neal, but he is priced up at 6'7", where you would expect to see a little bit more upside from him. So don't love him as a play. Zeke Cook, who did not start in the last game, sitting there at 6'2". He actually had one of his better games coming off the bench, ironically enough. Okay at 6'2", but as a non-starter, that's a little bit tough to get to. Kevon Hunt, 25% shot rate, 24% usage rate, and a 5.2% steal rate. He is 5K. Minutes the last few games haven't been great. He does have some foul issues. He got a little bit handsy in their San Diego game at least, but he does have upside at 5K if we can get him to 20 minutes. Not a guarantee that that's going to happen. The other two starters, Chase Adams, Colty Young. Chase Adams has a 25% assist rate, and then you have Colty Young, a 38 three-point attempts, only shooting 24%, but he has the most attempts on the team, has a shot rate of 22%. He is out there absolutely chucking. He's also 6'2", not the greatest price, did have his best game of the season against Missouri. Will be tasked with firing away here again in this game, but you look at the different prices for the Jackson State guys, there isn't really anyone appealing besides Evans. Like, I think we just need to go ahead and find the salary and pay that 8K price tag for Evans. The rest of these guys just have a lot of downside. If it was the DK pricing of yesteryear, we would see Colty Young at like 3.5. We would see O'Neal at like 4K. We'd be able to just play these guys and everybody would score and it would be, a fun time for all. But we have them at stiff prices that just doesn't make sense to use them. However, being that it's a 2-game slate during your build, you may not have a choice. And I love that. I love the torturous pricing. Give it all to me. Make everybody Draft Street style pricing. Like, shit, Draft Street used to just price everybody at like 11K, whether they were good or not. And shit, it made it tough, but it was fun. Put hair on your chest, I'll tell you that. Lipscomb versus Bowling Green, the other game on the slate. You gotta love that. Lipscomb versus Bowling Green. Let's go. Lipscomb 62nd in tempo ranking, 221st in defensive efficiency. That's not very good. They don't defend very well. They gave up 85 points earlier this season to Drake. Drake, of course, has our guy, Tucker DeVries. He scored 36 against them. We love Tucker DeVries here at the Super Show. Really want to see Drake in the tournament again so we get some opportunities with him. He was phenomenal. Wichita State, they also gave up almost 80 points to them, right around 76. In that one, Colby Rogers, another lead guard, much like Tucker DeVries, who's more of a wing, I suppose, but still a lead alpha on the team, scored 20 real points. This is a very porous defense under Alenia Cuff. They gave up almost 80 to a Nashville team that has, of course, DFS favorite Drew Pember. Pember scored 28 against them. Asheville ended up losing that game, but Pember was all over doing what he wanted. Lipscomb dropped 106 on Alabama A&M and almost 100 against Tennessee Tech. So you're dealing with an offense that can certainly do some things here against this Bowling Green team. The starting lineup that the Bisons rolled with in their most recent game: Joe Anderson, Will Pruitt, A.J. McGinnis, Owen McCormick, and Darren Boyd. A.J. McGinnis spent some time. I mostly remember him from his freshman season at Greensboro. He did transfer to Cincinnati for a couple of games back in 2022, and then he's been on Lipscomb the last couple of seasons, and he has really developed into a big-time player for them. Owen McCormick was a viable shot blocking machine during his time at Presbyterian for the last couple of years. Now he's over here at Lipscomb. They have some guys who can definitely put up some points. The obvious candidate here is Darren Boyd, coming in at 7.3. Just happens to be the highest priced eligible player on the slate, taking a ton of shots. Looking at rates here, Boyd leads the team in usage at 29%. Shot rate is 28.9%. He is making 39% of his 21 attempts from long range, and he is drawing 6 fouls per 40. So another player here who is looking for a shot and generating offense whenever he feels like it, honestly. Now, granted, opponents haven't been the best, especially recently, but we'll take a look here and see. He had 12 shots against Wichita State, when you know Wichita State's defense is fairly stout at times. He did score 12 points, 4 rebounds, had 2 assists and a block. Relatively active. That was their first game. Then he had 16 and 2 against Drake. He had a usage rate of 27% in that particular game. Just a very high usage guy. Now, I mentioned I remember A.J. McGinnis from UNC Greensboro, and he showed flashes, and I actually really kind of liked him even though he didn't work out in Cincinnati. And looking at him, he's 6'8", so you have a kind of a decision point because I think you want to play one of Boyd or McGinnis. I think McGinnis is very intriguing because he actually had the bigger of the games, or the biggest games between the two, against those upper tier teams. And when I say upper tier teams, Wichita and Drake, they're not necessarily tier A teams, but they're certainly better than Tennessee Tech and Alabama A&M. No disrespect to them. Against Drake, over 40 fantasy points. Against Wichita State, 28. And then the Asheville game, he shot okay, just did nothing else, didn't rebound well. Obviously, Pember around causing chaos, had just the 12 fantasy points, still played 32 minutes. I would wonder if people are box score shopping and they see that, man, he had the down game, so they kind of maybe go to Boyd or they look elsewhere. I do think that's a mistake. I think McGinnis is the guy that we want here. If you can only play one, I would lean towards AJ McGinnis, just because if this game ends up being any kind of close, Ken Palm does have an 80-75 in favor of Lipscomb, by the way. You're going to see a lot of McGinnis. Shooting 52% from long range on 35 attempts. That's solid. 26% shot rate. Usage rates over 20%. I feel a little bit more confident in him than I do Boyd, even though maybe consistency has been better for Boyd throughout all of the games. But we've seen in the closer or bigger contests, we've seen McGinnis really show out. So that's my lean, but I actually don't mind both if you can get there. McCormick at 5'5", the Presbyterian transfer. In his last game, he was big, 18-10. They needed him against Pember, and he delivered 35 fantasy points in 27 minutes. That was the most minutes he's played this entire season. Doesn't have much foul trouble, but his minutes have kind of been anywhere between 15 to 22 on average, but he is 5'5", and that is a price that we can certainly work with. Will Pruitt at 6'4", back-to-back games over 30, just been getting to the rack, and he's been really getting a lot of free throws, generating a ton of offense at the foul line, drawing over 4 fouls per 40. So another guy on this Lipscomb team that's going to play significant minutes in a close competitive game as a starter. And then you have Joe Anderson at 4'7". So this is your value du jour, sub 5K play for Lipscomb as a starter. Played 33 minutes against Asheville, solidly scored 17 fantasy points. He scored 17 plus in 3 of his last 5 and 3 of his first 6. So he's somebody that you can look at as well. It is a guard play. We're going to be really hard up for forwards. We're going to be having a surplus of guards on this 2-game slate. So you'd probably rather try to get to McCormick if you can at 5'5", but Anderson does offer us some value at 4'7" that we can consider for sure. I'd tell you to play Dylan Faulkner too, but he's going to get a random DMP CD, so it's kind of hard to trust him as well. So I'd stick with the starters on this Lipscomb team. Looking at their rebounding rates, or their efficiency, I should say, they're nearly dead last in defensive rebounding efficiency. They're not particularly great on the offensive glass either. So there is an opportunity here for Bowling Green to take advantage, especially on the defensive glass. Bowling Green plays at the 78th fastest tempo, defensive efficiency 186th, offensive efficiency 267th. 2 relatively decent wins to start the season, Chicago State and Arkansas State. Then they turned around and lost to Oakland, Bellarmine, and Western Kentucky in their last loss, in their last game. They did start the following players: Jason Spurgeon, Marcus Hill, Dejon Humphrey, PJ Edwards, and Rashawn Agee. Off the bench, playing the second most minutes, I should say, Deshaun Phillip, Trey Thomas, Sam Towns. So they went about 8-9 deep in that particular matchup. The Bellarmine game, in which they got absolutely nuked, that stretched the lineup up a lot. Probably looking at a rotation of about 9 guys. Even in their close win against Arkansas State, we saw most of the rotation play anywhere from 17 to 27 minutes. Marcus Hill played 38 and Deshaun Humphrey played 31 in that game, but everyone else was in a range between 15 and 27. Now, Deshaun Phillip has been consistently playing a high amount of minutes. He didn't start their first two games, and then he started against Bellarmine and Oakland, and then he went back to the bench against Western Kentucky, where he continues to play an average of 25 minutes in games off the bench. He's actually pretty interesting. He's only 4.5. If he were to get back into the starting lineup, I do think he would be a really strong, probably borderline core must play because of the minutes we can expect. He doesn't have a incredible shot rate by any means. He is getting there with rebounds and other stats. His scoring just isn't very consistent. He has a shot rate under 10%. But granted, if he starts and plays 27 minutes, I do think you can pay that number off. Marcus Hill leads the team in usage at 32%, shot rate of 29%. He's drawing almost 7 fouls per 40. But wouldn't you know it, he is 6K, relatively decent price there for him. He is probably the priority Bowling Green play, especially with the amount of shots he's taken. You see there's been a couple of games where he's had double-digit free throws. Again, he draws a very high number of fouls, and he's able to generate points in a myriad of ways. So he's the play to circle. You do have at 7.6 Jason Spurgeon there. I think that's a little bit high. However, the Lipscomb rebounding is a negative, right? So this is a good matchup for Spurgeon. He should be able to flirt with double-digit rebounds. It's a matter of what else is he going to give us, because he's not the most efficient scorer by any means. And 7.6 is a pretty high price to pay for somebody who maybe scores 5, gets 13 rebounds. Like, I don't know. The upside's lacking, but the matchup is a plus. At 6.5, you can go down to Rashawn Agee. Minutes sort of lacking as well. We've seen as high as 31. We've seen as low as 15. So that's also very tough, but they're forwards, so we can fill a forward spot with either of those guys, or we can go to the bench with Sam Towns at 5.4. Pretty consistent, has scored double-digit fantasy points in all but one game so far. Can count on him for about 20 minutes off the bench. It's a lean play at 5.4, but, you know, a 2-game slate, there's not a lot of wrong moves that you make in terms of pre-lock structure. Pretty much anything will go on a 2-game slate. So that kind of leaves us with a core of the following. McGinnis, which I think might be the closest variation of a posh play of the day that you're going to get from me until December 1st when I officially start rolling those out. Love AJ McGinnis. I think somewhat low owned, and low owned on a 2-game slate is still probably 20%, but I really like AJ McGinnis for this one. Second, we're looking at the Lipscomb kid. Not the Lipscomb kid. On the Bowling Green side, Hill, Marcus Hill at 6K. He would be core play number 2 just because of where he's priced at. And then I would go up and core player number 3, Ken Evans from Jackson State. I think he's going to be a nightmare and likely one of the highest scorers on the slate. All right, let's jump over to the 3-game slate, and then we'll be all done, wrapped up. We'll get some rest, and then we'll reconvene here tomorrow morning to talk college football. Oh, okay. We're gonna have to do it like this. All right, so the 3-game slate is the following. We do not have pricing, so we're just gonna talk about relevant players, which we've had to do earlier in the week. South Alabama versus Maryland, Cal versus San Diego State. Gotta love having Cal and my man Jalen Tyson, but don't love them playing San Diego State. And then Northern Illinois versus DePaul. Let's start with that game because that's fun, right? DePaul is a team that whenever they're on the slate, and it's been that way for years, you know, my man JFL and a couple of other players, but anytime they're on the slate, we can not only target players for them as a pecking order develops, but certainly players against them. They're 1-4, suffered those tough losses to Long Beach State, Purdue, Fort Wayne. They beat South Dakota, which just really shows us how bad South Dakota is as well. Then they lost to South Carolina and San Francisco. So Ken Pom has a projection of 77 to 73 in favor of DePaul. But let's see here. Let's pull this up real quick. Because this is anytime, and there probably will be almost zero Big East games where DePaul is favored, but we have opportunities to bet against them in the non-con, especially in games like this where they're playing a team on paper that, yeah, they probably should beat, but we have been able to bet against them most of the season so far, and it's been very, very profitable. Scrolling down here, there's actually a lot of mid and low major games tomorrow. So if anybody loves those type of games and knows them, you're going to have lots of betting opportunities here. Not a lot of DFS opportunities. So Northern Illinois is plus 3.5. That is just such an obvious spot to probably just take the money line, but I'm just going to keep betting small dogs against DePaul until further notice. On the DePaul side, the last game they started the following: Chico Carter, Caleb Murphy, Jeremiah Oden, Elijah Fisher, and Deshaun Nelson. Jaden Henley, who was starting, has suddenly just like fallen down. Still uber high usage rate, but since popping out of the starting lineup after the first two games, he's played 20, 16, and 14 minutes. In his start against Long Beach State, he played just 11. And he was solid in the first game against Purdue Fort Wayne. Like, you guys might remember that when on the slate, like I liked Henley, and I still do. 27% usage rate, 24% shot rate, 33% assist rate, but his minutes are falling away. We'll see what the price tag actually is there, if he's going to be cheap and not like 6K or something. But it's going to be a minutes-based thing there for Henley, and if you can use him in your main lineup or not. Elijah Fisher has been one of the cheapest. He has played 31, 36, and 29 minutes since entering the starting lineup. Off the bench in their first two games, he played 33 and 27. So the Texas Tech transfer is the probably the best DePaul play. Granted, we won't know if his prices like come up to 8K or something as well, but as a sub 5K play, he's really strong. I would be very much on board with that. Deshaun Nelson, whose rates are fantastic, 26% usage, 28% shot rate, and 24% assist rate. But his actual contributions from a fantasy standpoint have been very, very lean. And he's playing less and less minutes because he can't seem to stop fouling. Right now, he has 6 fouls per 40 called rate, 4.8 last year. 3 fouls, 3, 4, 4, 3 so far. It's caused him to play just 26, 14, 19, 30, and 24. So only one game this year he's even hit the 30-minute mark. 2 others he was under 20. It's really tough to get behind using Deshaun Nelson. He's going to be probably pretty expensive, and he's just not staying on the floor long enough. I would like to look towards, if you're going to pay up for somebody on this DePaul team, Chico Carter, who is firing away, shooting almost 40% from long range. He's put together some relatively strong games. And then Jeremiah Oden, who, role player at Wyoming, but is coming in here and having to certainly carry some of the load for this DePaul team, shooting 40% from long range, which is a career high for him so far. And he's logging a ton of minutes, has played no less than 32 in any of their games this year. Now, his first 3, he kind of played above his head a little bit. The last 2, he's looked more like the role player that he was at Wyoming. So against South Carolina, played 33 minutes, but 7 points, 3 rebounds. Against San Francisco, 32 minutes, 9 points, 1 rebound. That's kind of what I'm accustomed to from seeing how Oden plays. He had some pretty big games. His first one, 13 and 8 with a block and a steal, and 16 and 5 with 3 assists and 2 blocks. And they're not huge games by the normal standard, but huge games for him. So if he comes out there 7K, I'm not in love with that price. I think I'm sticking to Fisher, and I'm okay paying whatever they ask for Carter because he's going to end up taking a bunch of shots. Caleb Murphy is struggled to get healthy over the last couple of seasons. Might he be getting there now? He has started in every game this season, has played over 27 minutes in 3 of those 5. It looked like he might have turned the corner. Against Long Beach State, he had a 14-7-4 3-steal game. I was like, okay, this is 2 years ago at South Florida, Caleb Murphy. But then against South Carolina, kind of just was there 20 minutes only, didn't do a whole lot, fouled out. And then against San Francisco, he had 6 turnovers, 2 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Did have 3 steals, but we want to see more out of Caleb Murphy unless he's going to be just bottom barrel price sub 4K. The Northern Illinois side, 20th in tempo ranking. So we're going to see a game here that's a little bit faster because of the way that the Huskies play. And I think they'll be able to enforce their tempo style on DePaul. 202nd in defense efficiency, 164th in offensive efficiency. They are a moderate to mediocre rebounding team. Their only loss so far was against Marquette early in the season. This starting 5 here that they'd been using: Zarik Nutter, David Coit, Philman Gebrouet, who is a DePaul transfer. Do we have a revenge narrative in the house? We do. Xavier Amos, and then Yannick Conan Niederhauser with Will Lovings-Watts and Harvin Barguin off the bench. In the Little Rock game that they just won, they put up 98 points. The starting 5 all scored 15 or more individual points. It was a total ham sandwich fest for this Northern Illinois starting 5. Looking at the rates of this group, David Coit, 27% usage rate, 30% shot rate, 23% assist rate, drawing 6 fouls per 40. Philman Gebrouet, 25% usage rate, 23% shot rate, and he's drawing 7 fouls per 40. Zarik Nutter, 26% shot rate. He does have a solid true shooting percentage, and he is doing a lot of good scoring at all 3 levels, 42% from long range, 58% on 2-point field goals, and making 82% of his free throws. So Nutter is a guy who can definitely score. Then you have Amos shooting 47% from long range, 4.6% block rate, and then Niederhauser has the 8th best offensive rebounding rate in the country and a top 100 block rate. So that starting 5, they're leaning on pretty heavily. Lovings-Watts is a freshman. They are using him off the bench, typically playing 15 to 18 minutes. And then Harvin Ebergargan, I think I say that. He's been playing around low 20s minutes, very low usage player. So if he comes out like 3K or 3.5, you can use him for a minutes play, but it's going to be very lean. If he's anything over 4 or 5, I don't think we really need to bother there. You want to keep most of your exposure here without knowing prices to Coit, Gebrouet, and Nutter. And you're probably going to want to play 2 of them. Amos is acceptable as well. All right, Cal versus San Diego State. You guys know Mark Madsen's got his hands full. Like he brought in a good roster, and you know he's done well at Utah Valley, but it's going to take time to get his guys into Cal. They have started the season 2-4. Tough, close loss to UTEP on a neutral court. Tough, close loss to Tulane on a neutral court. Now they're going to finish up against San Diego State. Ken Palm has an 82-66. It doesn't seem very good chance of them beating San Diego State. Defensively, Cal is 267th in defensive efficiency, and they're not really playing fast, which is something we've seen from Madsen at times. Jalen Tyson has been fan-frickin-tastic. Anytime he's on a slate, I'm almost just plugging him in. He was sub 30% on the 2 Cal slates we had most recently, and he's flirted with a triple-double and put up 40 bangers for us often. 32% shot rate, 32% usage rate, 30% shot rate, combined 30% rebounding rate, 26% assist rate, drawing 7 fouls per 40, shooting about 37% from 3-point range. He's just got total freedom. He's going to play a bunch of minutes. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to contribute in all categories. Like Tyson's just the real deal. Dating back to Texas Tech, even his high school days, like you knew the upside Tyson has. Now he's playing for a bad Cal team that has pieces such as Devin Askew, Jalen Cohn, Fardaws Aimaq, and he's just going to be a star. He's going to be a statistical star for us on Pac-12 Thursdays. Speaking of Fardaws, who went into the stands recently in that UTEP game, I guess there was a fan telling him to go back to his country and saying all this other dumb stuff, right? And Fardaws actually went into the stands, and I don't certainly condone that, but that fan probably had what he had was coming to him. And sometimes freedom of speech is not freedom from consequences. And I think people forget that sometimes. So, you got the 7-foot dude about to pound the shit out of a 5'5" dude running his mouth. That was kind of comical, but at the same time, he probably shouldn't be doing that. 29% usage rate for him, 27% shot rate. He's making 38% of his threes, 25% defensive rebounding rate, combined rate of almost 40%, and a block rate of 4.5. He's solid. Jalen Cone has a usage rate over 20%, shot rate over 26. He shot 60 threes already. He's making only 30%, but Jalen Cone, he just has the green light to absolute chuck. And between him and Tyson, they've accounted for 82 threes. He has been a big-time shot taker, not necessarily a big-time shot maker, and he's not contributing much in those other categories. And that's usually what we've seen from Jalen Cone over the course of his career. During his couple seasons at Virginia Tech, very reliant on the three, very reliant on scoring. Now, he developed himself at Northern Arizona into a guy who, got assists, rebounded a little bit better, and hitting all these shots still. But now that he's back at Cal, we've seen him kind of regress back to just being a one-dimensional shooter. Devin Askew had missed the last 3 games. He's kind of in and out of the lineup. He was playing solidly prior to that. With him out, the Tulane game, the starting 5 that Cal decided to go with, Cone, Tyson, Amick, as usual, with Grant Newell and Monty Bowser. They did bring off the bench Gus Larson and Rodney Brown, and we didn't see ND Okafor as much. Okafor has upside and is still relatively raw as a prospect, but minutes are seemingly hard to come by for him right now. You really want to keep your Cal exposure to only Cone, Tyson, Amick for now, and going up against San Diego State, this isn't the best spot to really go and get them. San Diego State 4-1. They had the earlier season loss to BYU, but they've mowed down Long Beach State, St. Mary's, and then they beat America's team, the Washington Huskies, in overtime, 197. I'm shocked as hell. I'm shocked as you are that they gave San Diego State in that game an actual game. The neutral court game here, going up against Cal. They, again, 82-66 is the projection here. Top 25 in both offensive and defensive efficiency here under Brian Dutcher. Jaden Leday has been an absolute revelation, currently second on the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings. He's got usage and shot rate percentages above 30%. He has a combined rebounding rate well over 35%. He's drawing 9 fouls per 40. He's even hit 3 of his 10 triples so far this season, but on non-3-pointers, he's shooting 64% from the field. The big thing so far is he's drawing the most fouls of his career, but he's also not getting called for as many fouls, the least amount of his career. We've seen him during his time at TCU have foul rate above 8. During his time last year with San Diego State, it had risen above 5. It seems like his final collegiate season here for San Diego State, he is going to threaten for not only Mountain West Player of the Year, but possibly a first-team All-America candidate if this continues. And Leday had shown flashes in the past, but the numbers, the way he's playing this year is absolutely phenomenal. Against Fullerton, it started out 27-10. Against BYU in the loss, he still had 21-7. Against Long Beach State in a tougher than they expected game, 27-11. St. Mary's, they blew their doors off, 25-8. That St. Mary's team, they're going to be way worse than we thought. And then in the overtime win against the Huskies, 34 real. He had, 17 rebounds, a block and a steal, 3 assists, 18 free throw attempts, made 14 of 18. It's the 3rd time already this season that he's attempted double-digit free throws in a single game. 10 of 10 against Long Beach State, 10 of 15 against Cal State Fullerton. He's not, you're not going to want to do Hack-a-Day, shooting 78% from the foul line. The Hack-a-Day plan isn't going to be a thing, and he's just so good at drawing fouls. Teams aren't even intending to send him to the line. He's just, once he gets it on the block, it's either going to be an easy deuce or you're just going to make him work for it at the foul line, and he's going to hit 78%. He's fantastic. The players around him, no Matt Bradley this year, but the guard group and wings around him are really, really perfect for his play style. Micah Parrish has taken a huge step forward this year. He's shooting 50% from long range. Reese Waters, who was kind of a jack of all trades role player for USC last year, stepping into a bigger starter role. He's shooting 44% from long range. He's actually been fantastic, putting up like 25 to 30 fantasy points on the regular. Lamont Butler is still around. He's shooting 32% from long range. Darian Trammell, who missed their first game, he has been coming off the bench for San Diego State since coming back against BYU, playing about a 20-minute roll off the bench. He's shooting right around 40% from long range as well. I expect Trammell to eventually get into the starting lineup and fill more of an alpha role on the perimeter that we would expect. But with the way the team's playing with Leday as their star, there's no reason to force Trammell into the starting lineup because he's going to chuck when he's out there. And if he's taking shots from Leday, it's not good basketball. This team needs to continue to run through Jadon Leday. Micah Parrish, who spent a couple of seasons at Oakland playing 1 million minutes, he is a really, really underrated three-point shooter. When you watch in real time, you might not even notice that Parrish is so active. And then by the time you turn around and look at the box, you're staring at, 18 points, 5 triples, 6 rebounds. Like, where did this dude come from? He's really, really been a great sidekick for Leday, and kind of embracing that role. And, if teams decide to double Leday, he's standing out there ready to fire away on a three. There's a lot of good three-point shooters on this team. Like I said, they're just built around Leday, and they're going to be good again. FAU, they had that really pretty wild loss to Bryant, which just shows you how the fact that the college basketball parity is nuts. But FAU turned around, beat Butler in a really good Texas A&M team today. We could see a situation in which SDSU and Florida Atlantic just march their way back to the tournament. Honestly, both of these teams are just so good. And San Diego State, I think they're going to absolutely cruise. They have a game later on in December against Gonzaga. That'll be a good litmus test. They have a game against Stanford. They should probably win that game, but it's at least, gives them an opportunity to play a upper tier team. The Mountain West is going to be good. Mountain West, I know, sent a decent amount of teams to the tournament last year, but overall it was a down year for that conference. At least I felt like it from top to bottom. They're a much more balanced conference, and if San Diego State comes out of there this year, they're going to make another run to the Elite Eight, or Sweet 16 at minimum. Last game, South Alabama versus Maryland. The Terps, speaking of disappointing teams like we were with St. Mary's, the Terps have been uber disappointing. 2-3 at this point of the season. Mount St. Mary's and UMBC wins. The only game where I thought they looked good was their recent win against UMBC. They had a 40-point game against Villanova. They lost a close one to a super athletic, freaky UAB team. And they lost by 3 to a Davidson team that they should have been able to muscle. Part of the problem is the guards are not giving it to Julian Reese. They're not allowing him to work on the block. They're not putting him in a good spot to do so. Part of the other problem is when Reese does get the entry pass, there isn't a threat of any three-point shooters on this team. Dante Scott shooting 36% on 19. Jameer Young shooting 34% on 23 attempts. But the freshman is awful from long range. Jamie Kaiser, the other freshman, has been awful from long range. Jordan Geronimo's only made 1 of his 7. Like, there's no real shooting threats on this team. So the defense doesn't have to respect that, and they're giving Reese an extra defender down low and causing problems. If Reese can get on the block in one-on-one coverage, he's going to score. He's that good. And you look at the game against UMBC, they actually went to him more often. He had 15 points, 13 rebounds, a couple blocks, got to the foul line a bunch of times, shot 5 of 8 from there. But the game plan should be for Reese to have a post touch every time down the court. There should never be a time where the Terps fire a shot away that Reese didn't at least touch the ball once. That's just my take on it. You've seen some games where, like Villanova, where they either got in foul trouble or they didn't use him right. They just lose. And I don't think it's would be smart to just assume that, hey, they're going to beat South Alabama by 20. Ken Palm has it 71-59, but if they come out flat on offense, this South Alabama team can absolutely steal one. Please believe. The one thing about the Terps is their defensive efficiency is top 25 in the country, so they have that going for them, and they are a very good rebounding team overall. And they should be able to win this game against South Alabama. But a bad shooting night and Julian Reese foul trouble, or Reese being neglected by the guards, will lead to a disaster for this Maryland team. Still love Reese. He'll be expensive. Young's going to be expensive. Scott's probably overpriced. I do like the freshman Deshaun Harris-Smith long-term. He showed some flashes in the early part of the season, but he's already hit that freshman wall, which is kind of concerning. And then Jordan Geronimo, who came over from Indiana, he has been a really good offensive rebounder and overall a 27% combined rebounding rate. But he's not a real threat to score, and that's also been a problem. There are some cheapies on this team, guys like Jamie Kaiser, Jari Long, that we can look at. We even saw in a game where I thought Julian Reese should do well. Caleb Swanton Roger came in and grabbed like 5 boards against UAB. I know he only played like 9 minutes, but they have some talent on this bench, and we can certainly look at some value here on this Maryland team. And we'll have a clearer picture of that once the actual pricing comes out. On the South Alabama side, they are a very slow squad. Their defensive efficiency is horrible, as you might imagine. Gave up 102 points in just one regulation period. 2 halves to Alabama. They played a triple OT thriller against Nicholls State like 2 nights later, gave up 102 to Nicholls. They've given up 75 plus in 2 wins against Denver and SIU Edwardsville. And they played a non-D1 against Lynn, in which they still gave up over 60 points and barely cleared that one. Their most impressive win is a 70-56 victory over a Buffalo team, and that's a Buffalo team that's lost just about all of their talent from the last couple of years, and is playing C. Chapman, who is a UMass transfer from years ago in Illinois State. He's been a role player throughout his career, and he's turning into the alpha for Buffalo, so if that tells you anything. The South Alabama starting group, we'll look at the SIU Edwardsville game, not their 9D1. Julian Margrave, Maxwell Land, Isaiah Gator, Thomas Howe, and Marcus Millender, Tyrell Jones coming off the bench. They ended up running a very tight rotation. Tyrell Jones started his career at Auburn, where he didn't play very many games. Then he transferred over to South Alabama. South Alabama in 2022 had a very heralded transfer group: J.J. Chandler, Charles Manning, Javon Franklin. Like, they had a bunch of high upper tier transfers with high major experience that year. They ended up winning over 20 games as well, and playing a few postseason games in not the Big Dance, but one of the secondary tournaments. So they have also done a very good job with the transfer portal over the years. Greg Parham was there. Tyrell Jones decided to stay. Kevin Samuel, who was at TCU and Gulf Coast, you may remember him. He did some good years for us at TCU. And Isaiah Moore, who has been around the block, was huge for them last year. So they've done very, very good. Tyrell Jones has been a part of that. So depending on what kind of price point we're talking with Jones, he has been one of South Alabama's guys over the last couple of seasons. Does have a usage rate of almost 20%, drawing almost 6 fouls per 40, defensive rebounding rate efficiency of 20%. Somebody to look at. The highest usage rate on the team, Marcus Millender at 25%, 40.3% assist rate, top 20 in the country, and he's currently knocking down 59% of his threes. He is a sub 6 foot tall point guard. We like our Mighty Mouses around the Super Show. Millender has been a starter after the first 2 games. He ended up starting. He's played 6 straight as a starter, and he even had against Nicholls State 53 minutes in that triple overtime. 23 real points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists, flirted with a triple-double. He's been a little bit lackluster the last couple of games. Again, he is a freshman, but depending on what kind of price point we're looking at here in this matchup, we could be talking about a lot of mill-ender here in the morning. Isaiah Gator, 21% usage rate, 22% shot rate. Maxwell Land shooting 30% from long range, 21% shot rate, and Thomas Howe combined rebounding rate of almost 40%. Those are the relevant names to know. Julian Margrave, who has started the last 3 games after missing the first 3 of the season and coming off the bench against Nichols. He has played 25, 37, and 35 minutes. Pretty good opportunity for maybe Julian Margrave to be underpriced when the slate does drop, just because he doesn't have the greatest season numbers just yet, but he has been really good over the last 3. 22% shot rate, a combined rebounding rate of almost 20%, block rate of 3%. He has knocked down 11 of 18 triples. That's 61%. That's obviously scorching. Wouldn't expect that to continue for the entire season, but right now, Julian Margrave looks like somebody who could potentially be a little bit of a sneakier option there. So again, without seeing pricing, just going on what we have, Jalen Tyson, I know it's San Diego State, but it's a short slate. And I'm never probably fading Tyson whenever Cal's on the slate. If he gets to like 10K, then it's going to become okay, well, you finally got me. But anything under 9K, I'm just firing Tyson in without any questions asked. Jadon Lede on the other side, I don't think we can fade him. You're just going to keep heat checking a guy like that. He's probably going to get Fardaws in early foul trouble. I don't think Fardaws is going to have a very good game. So Lede, you just got to keep playing him. You got to play him on 12-game slates, let alone a 3-game slate. So Tyson and Lede, let's do it. And then we'll look for some value on the DePaul side, South Alabama side when the pricing comes. As of right now, I do like the Julian Margrave play here, assuming he doesn't come out at 7K. Like I'm fairly confident he's going to be somewhere between 4.3 and 5K. And he's somebody that we can certainly use, especially as a projected starter. So he'll be core number 3. But I also obviously really like anyone playing DePaul, kind of a bonus core type of play there, being one of Zarik Nutter, David Coit, or Philman Grebowet. Like Philman, revenge narrative there. I'm a sucker for narratives like that. I'll have some exposure there to film on for sure. We also don't have any prize picks just yet. It's a lot of low to mid majors, as I mentioned, so we won't probably get a ton. We do have a handful of props over on DK. One being Chico Carter, 21.5 PRA. Let's see what his points are first. 14.5. So it's minus 140 for under 14.5 for Chico Carter. So I think I will take his over 21.5 PRA. Gives a little bit of more room there. He does get assists, does score, does a little bit with the rebounding. And then if you really have the testicular fortitude, as Mick Foley would say, Caleb Murphy's PRA number is 10.5 at minus 120. There is a chance he misses. But if Murphy is getting a solid number of minutes anywhere above 25, 10.5 PRA, that's, I mean, shoot, how could we not be somewhat interested in that? Going up against South Alabama, we have a player combo here for our guy, Julian Reese, at 23.5. It's minus 120. I do like that for Reese. Looking at his rebounding prop, it's only 8.5 as well. Kind of like that, but I think I would lean into that PRA against South Alabama. On paper, he should be able to have a PRA number somewhere between 28 and 30. Will he? It's a lot of them at the mercy of the guards, but I definitely feel pretty confident in him. And like I said, Chico Carter, 21.5 PRA. So those are what we're looking at right now. I think that will pretty much end it. There isn't a lot to talk about. I wish there would have been more on the docket here. Okay, so the showdown slate is going to be Ohio State versus Santa Clara, which is the final of that tournament game. They do not have pricing for that as either, but just to throw it out there, it should be obvious at this point. Santa Clara is a very good team despite losing, talent to the NBA. Carlos Marshall has been solid. The 7-footer Christoph Tilley, who was really good today against Oregon in their 88-82 win, 18 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He's been super active. He started the entire season, but it's only been since the last 3 games that he's turned himself into a really high-end fantasy option all of a sudden. I probably won't be too cheap there on that showdown slate after how the way he's been playing, but I like this Santa Clara group with Johnny O'Neal, Adama Ball, former Arizona transfer, Christoph Tilley, Carlos Marshall, Jalen Benjamin, who has been playing college basketball since the Reagan administration when he was at UAB pre-COVID. And they also have Francisco Cafaro, who, of course, was at Virginia. So this is a solid Santa Clara group, no doubt. The Ohio State side, you just keep plugging away at Roddy Gale. He is having a fantastic season. And Bruce Thornton, who has exploded onto the scene in year 2, gone from just a facilitator to now an everything. 29 real points against that Alabama team in that win. The rest of Alabama, aside from Zed Key sometimes, is very, very average. Even Jamison Battle has taken 10 steps backwards. Roddy Gale and Bruce Thornton are just carrying this Buckeyes team right now, and I think that's going to continue. So when it comes to that showdown slate, you're going to want to play one of those two in your captain spot, play Tilley, play Marshall, and then see what kind of salary you have left. All right, that will do it for tonight's iteration of the CBB Super Show. I'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 1 hour before lock for the CFB Saturday slate. Then we'll be back Monday night for the Big Tuesday slate, 9 p.m. PST. We'll start getting some special guests on the show, or maybe an appearance from Mike Kutry, who has been very, very busy with his betting stuff and real life. What's that? But lots of content coming, another 4 shows next week, and a daily slate write-up for all Maine. We've been getting a lot of questions lately in the Discord. What's the content going to be? Is there going to be a write-up? If there's a main slate, there will be content. If it's an early slate or a secondary slate, usually we'll have something in the Discord for that. But anything designated as a main will have an article. Just want to continue to reiterate that. I am committed to dropping content each and every day between now and the end of April when we're talking about We Sleep in May with Rothbot. See you guys. Be back tomorrow. Don't forget to hit that like button, interact, drop comments. That's the best way you can support me and the Super Show right now. Appreciate it. See y'all tomorrow.